Hello. So this is International Women's Month, and March 7th is going to be International Women's Day. So on that occasion, uh, I would like to read a little bit to you from my book Beyond #MeToo, out from Sage Publications, and this is me, the author Tanushri Ghosh. Now, before I read some segments of this book, I would really like to talk a little bit about this book. As I started with the title Beyond Me Too, I actually looked at the before, the parallel, and then the beyond, and tried to really explore Me Too with a lens of what is happening not just in India but also globally, and what has happened, to really try and answer this question of what is it that stands in the way of women's safety and equal rights for women and inclusion for women. It has a lot of testimonies, it has a lot of academic research incorporated into it, but most importantly, it is narrated in a very, very human and relatable tone through many case studies and explorations of gender as we see it in our lives today. So, with that, I would like to get into the reading. I would read two segments. I will start with just a little bit of the preface, which talks about why I wrote this book, and then I will move on to reading a couple of pages from the chapter introduction. Preface. Over the years that this book has been in progress, many changes have transpired. Such changes are expected to transpire every day. For example, as I am writing this preface, I hear of the Bombay High Court judgment on POCSO Act that groping a minor's breast is not to be considered sexual attack, January 2021. These changes will make many such laws which are analyzed in this work different from what they were at the time of writing. Some will be rendered toothless, new legal provisions will emerge, but what will not change is what I felt as a little girl, groped by a stranger who squeezed my breast, which happened to me multiple times as a child. And if anything can be said from reading social media posts of my friends today, happens to all of us again and again. What will not change is what I feel reading the Bombay High Court judgment today, as I learned that this judgment was passed by a female judge. This feeling is why I wrote this book. This feeling is why I hope you, man or woman, will read it. Now, moving on to my reading from the first chapter, Introduction. Let's start with the fact that we didn't think of India having its Me Too when scores of women posted on social media in solidarity of the hashtag. India's Me Too movement specifically and largely refers to the breakout of accusations against stalwarts in the entertainment and media in late 2018, not the joining in of thousands of Indian women sharing their stories with hashtag MeToo right alongside their global counterparts during October of 2017. How common sexual harassment is for Indian women was, alas, not a surprise to most of us. Barring a few responses, possibly from the likes of my Cornell mates, which refers to a segment I have discussed just before, to the posts where men expressed shock and some hint of sadness, the chatter was limited to its known sad state of affairs. For even though we are tabooed to talk about it in most settings and find solace in segregating what happens and to whom, we know that in India, women's harassment is commonplace. However, because as a nation we seldom have time to focus on gender and the widespread effects of patriarchy on the same, we default back to the status quo. Movements get triggered by incidents, but gender consistently remains second and secondary for both India and Indians to class, caste, and survival. So, on International Women's Day and Women's Month, I feel it is very important to understand how we value women in the nation, how we stand against the rest of the world, and that might surprise you on what you learn from this book, how common our problems are, and where are we differentiated. This book has chapters titled Towards the Culture of Belief. It talks about why building of a culture is important and if or not Me Too has contributed to it globally, and then India in the Indian context. It talks about the fight before. This goes into the Bhavri Devi accounts, the Rupan Deol Bajaj fights. It dives into the cost globally, the socio, not just the social cost, but the economic cost of not having gender parity. It goes into a deep analysis of what I have titled India versus Bharat, to look into some very specific statements and their origin, very specific states of women in India and their origin. Deep dives into the consent through the chapter The C Word. It goes into after Me Too, the evolution, looking into global case studies and their resolutions. Talks about the all or nothing game, where we talk about sexual harassment moving into gender discrimination and how easy or difficult it is to prove it. It analyzes many of the current laws, not just in India but around the world. Talks about the real risk. In this, we dive down into the men's right movements and what are their arguments and how much of that is valid. And then it talks about the path forward. So I hope you will grab a copy of this book, and thank you for staying with me through this reading. Bye-bye.